What if the version of history you were taught was incomplete? Not just missing a few details, but missing entire empires? What if the story of civilization was bigger, older, and more diverse than you were ever told? For generations, the popular narrative was one of a primitive and undeveloped Africa, a continent just waiting for outsiders to bring it into the modern world. But the actual evidence, carved in stone, forged in gold, and engineered on a scale that is still staggering, tells a very different story. This is the story of the empires that were conveniently ignored, and the undeniable proof of advanced civilizations that shocked the world. We'll investigate why their legacies were downplayed, dismissed, and in some cases actively erased from our collective memory. We all learn about the glory of Rome, the wisdom of Greece, and the dynasties of China. But what about the African power that the prophet Mani in the 3rd century AD called one of the 4 greatest empires on earth? Right alongside Rome, Persia, and China? Or the desert kingdom that mastered hydraulic engineering to build cities in the middle of the Sahara, a feat that baffled even the Romans? What about the southern African capital with stone walls so immense and sophisticated that European colonizers simply refused to believe they could be African? These aren't myths, they're facts, inconvenient truths that dismantle the comfortable Eurocentric version of history we've all been fed. A version of history that wasn't just missing a few pages, but was deliberately written to justify oppression. Let's be honest about the history most of us got in school. African history, if it was covered at all, usually started with slavery and colonialism. Thousands of years of complex civilization were condensed into a few dismissive paragraphs about scattered tribes. We were shown a dark continent, a historical void with no major innovations, no grand architecture, no great ambition. And this narrative wasn't an accident, it was a tool to justify the transatlantic slave trade, to legitimize colonial conquest, and to build the very foundations of racial hierarchy. Africa had to be stripped of its history. You can't enslave a people if you acknowledge their heritage is as rich as your own. You can't launch a civilizing mission if you admit that great civilizations were already there. So the story was simplified, the achievements ignored, and the great empires of Africa were pushed into the shadows. Colonial education was often designed to teach Africans that they had no history or culture of value before Europeans arrived. A strategy so effective its echoes are still heard today. But real history is stubborn. It leaves footprints. And today, we're following them. We're not just adding a few missing chapters, we're reclaiming a stolen library of human achievement. We're going to journey across the continent, from the highlands of Ethiopia to the sands of the Sahara and down to the plains of Zimbabwe, to uncover the truth of 3 monumental empires whose stories were buried. This is more than a history lesson. It's an act of restoration. Our first stop is in the highlands of modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, home to an empire that should be as famous as Rome, the Kingdom of Axum. Flourishing from around the 1st to the 8th century AD, Axum was no isolated kingdom. It was a global superpower. The Persian prophet Mani wasn't exaggerating when he put Axum in the same league as Rome and Persia. He was stating a geopolitical fact. Axum controlled the vital trade routes of the Red Sea and Indian Ocean, and its port city of Adulis was a bustling hub. Axum's wealth was legendary. They exported gold, ivory, emeralds, and frankincense, becoming a primary supplier of luxury goods to the Roman world. Axum was one of the first African states to mint its own coins, a clear sign of its power and economic independence. Around 350 AD, the Axumite king Ezana conquered the legendary kingdom of Kush. Later in the 6th century, King Caleb sent a massive fleet across the Red Sea to conquer parts of modern-day Yemen. The city of Axum is dominated by colossal single-stone obelisks, or stelae. The largest of them, the Great Stele, now toppled, stood over 33 meters high and weighed a mind-boggling 520 tons. So why was Axum downplayed? Because a powerful, wealthy Christian African kingdom that was an equal to European and Middle Eastern powers didn't fit the colonial narrative. Now we travel west, into the heart of the Sahara Desert in modern-day Libya. Here an empire thrived, the Garamantes. The Garamantes were, in fact, brilliant engineers who built the first urban society in a major desert that wasn't on a river. Thousands of years ago, water became trapped deep underground in a massive aquifer. The Garamantes figured out how to mine it. They constructed a vast network of underground tunnels, known as fogaras, that sloped gently for miles. Using satellite imagery, archaeologists have found over 750 kilometers of these subterranean aqueducts. They supported a large population, with their capital Garama housing around 10,000 people. They built fortified cities and massive castles, transforming the desert into a landscape of architectural strength. For 20th century historians, the whole idea of an urban society in the Sahara just seemed too fantastic to be true. The truth, revealed by modern archaeology, is that they weren't barbarians. They were masters of their environment. For our final journey, we go south to the nation that takes its name from this ancient wonder, Zimbabwe. Here lie the ruins of a city so spectacular, its very existence sparked a century of racist controversy. This is Great Zimbabwe. Built between the 11th and 15th centuries, it was the capital of a vast kingdom. At its peak, an estimated 18,000 people lived here, making it a bustling metropolis for its time. What's breathtaking about Great Zimbabwe are its structures. The city is made of massive enclosures and towers built from granite, all constructed without a single drop of mortar. The stones were so perfectly shaped and fitted together that the walls have stood for nearly 1,000 years. The most famous part, the Great Enclosure, has a wall over 11 meters high and 250 meters long. It's the largest single ancient structure south of the Sahara. Artifacts found on site, like Chinese porcelain and Persian pottery, prove it was a powerful hub connected to a trade network that spanned the Indian Ocean. So why would a site this important be erased? It wasn't just erased, it was stolen. When European colonizers first saw the ruins in the late 19th century, they were stunned. The colonial ideology insisted that Africans were incapable of building something like this. So a fiction was invented. An explorer named Karl Mauch declared it couldn't be the work of local people. He claimed it was built by ancient foreigners, maybe the Queen of Sheba or Phoenicians. This lie was eagerly adopted by the colonial administration of Rhodesia. It became official doctrine, used to legitimize colonial rule. If a great white race had been there before, the European settlers weren't colonizers, they were just returning. This lie was devastating. Treasure hunters tore the site apart, destroying crucial archaeological evidence. For decades, the Rhodesian government actively suppressed any research that pointed to the site's indigenous African origins. Archaeologists who dared state the obvious, that the city was clearly built by the ancestors of the local Shona people, were silenced and their careers threatened. The battle over Great Zimbabwe was never about archaeology, it was about power. It was a fight to deny a people their heritage, to justify subjugating them. Today, Great Zimbabwe stands as a monument of resilience against one of the most blatant acts of historical erasure in modern times. The stories of Axum, the Garamantes, and Great Zimbabwe aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern. The motive is as simple as it is ugly, to justify exploitation. The narrative of a primitive Africa was essential for the transatlantic slave trade and European colonialism. To rationalize buying and selling human beings, you first have to dehumanize them. By erasing Africa's history of kingdoms, science, and art, you create the fiction of a people without a past. This makes their enslavement look like a rescue. Later, during the scramble for Africa, the same logic was used to justify colonial conquest. The so-called civilizing mission was a sham. You can't claim you're bringing civilization to a continent when you're ignoring the advanced civilizations already there. Acknowledging these societies had complex governments and trade networks would expose the mission for what it really was: a military occupation for economic gain. The erasure of African history was a prerequisite for colonialism. It provided the moral cover for seizing land, extracting resources, and imposing foreign rule. This casts a long shadow that we are still dealing with today. The ruins of Axum, the ghost tunnels of the Garamantes, and the stone walls of Great Zimbabwe are more than just archaeological sites. They are irrefutable proof that a rich and powerful history was buried. A false narrative was built on its grave. But the truth can't be buried forever. The work of archaeologists, historians, and storytellers is bringing this lost history back into the light, piece by painstaking piece. And this isn't just a loss for people of African descent, it's a loss for all of us. It has given every single one of us a warped and incomplete understanding of our shared human story. History isn't just what's written down, it's what we choose to remember and pass on. So, which of these empires blew your mind the most? What other histories that have been left in the shadows do you think need to be told? Let us know in the comments. The conversation doesn't end here. If you believe this history needs to be shared, help us get the word out. History is a battlefield, and remembering is an act of resistance.